Serious, what was your first traumatic experience? When I was 5, 6, my drunken dad and pissed off mother were fighting again. They fought quite often. This particular fight my dad was extra drunk. When I was going to bed they bursted into my room. My dad was holding her on the ground with a knife to her neck threatening to kill her. 10ish minutes later my dad is in the garage with one of our many guns to his head. Loaded and safety off. My brother, both my sisters and I were watching as he almost shot himself. They aren't together anymore. Had similar happen to me at 13ish, except I was the one being held down with a knife above my head. It's an incredibly vulnerable feeling to be at the mercy of someone else, especially when it's someone you love. I was 4. My family went to visit my grandparents. They had an in-ground pool. Everyone was outside having a BBQ. I was walking around the edge of the pool and looked down and saw my little brother had fallen in the pool right behind the ladder. He was only 1, so he obviously couldn't swim. I laid down on my stomach and looped my arms under his armpits, pulling his head above the water. But just barely. He was heavy. He was fully dressed and I was only 4. I screamed and screamed for our mother. It felt like forever, but someone finally noticed me and all the adults came rushing over. No one ever talked to me about it afterwards. I was terrified of water for a long time, and I'm still very overprotective of my little brother. Not talking to kids about trauma they experience is a common theme here. My dad beat the shit out of me when I was 7 years old because I told him I didn't like him singing to me when he woke me up for school. I'm about the same age he was when he did that to me, and I can't imagine having the arrogance to do that to a child. Edit. Some people have commented on my use of the word arrogance. There are a number of terms that might describe his personality, and pretty much every suggestion you all have given would fit. I chose that word specifically because it highlights the fact that he believed he could get away with it and expect that our relationship would be fine and dandy. My kid is probably a little older than I was the first time I got spanked, slapped or whatever else, and it is pretty ducking wild to think about my mom doing stuff like that. Granted, I think my daughter's smarter than I was at her age, 4, but if I ever hit her even once I know for a fact she would never forgive me and probably wouldn't be able to trust me outside of obligation. Was molested starting around age 4 by my grandpa. I didn't know that it was bad. I just thought it was supposed to be like our secret. I was so young I didn't even know. Not until I grew up a little more and he showed me a gun and said, if you ever tell anyone, I'll kill myself before the cops can get me. I was still super young, so that traumatized me pretty bad. I didn't want to be the reason why my grandpa died, so I stayed quiet. This went on for years until I grew up more and had the choice to stay home or visit. Around 9th grade. It left me with this weird feeling whenever I have sex. I always feel that it's wrong and I'm dirty or tainted. It's an ugly feeling right in my chest, and after I climax I cry. It sucks, man. I was also molested by a family member all throughout my childhood, and I totally get the feeling you're talking about. Sex is a normal and healthy thing, but I can't help but feel disgusting and ashamed about it. I'm currently in therapy for it, but so far it's only helped with the nightmares surrounding my abuse. I hope things get better for you. No, you're not alone. Coming up on 2 years in a few months, a homeless man committed suicide by kneeling in the middle of the road. It was 12:30 AM. I was on my way back to work from lunch. He was wearing all black, and I didn't even have time to press the brakes because there is little to no lighting near the port I work at. My guess is he was hoping for one of the many semi-trucks that go down that road, but instead he got me. Still don't like driving at night, but I'm the night guy, and I still have to drive that road. I saw a family of 6 get into a bad car wreck on the interstate Easter Sunday of 2nd grade. Got a good 5-second view of a contorted body of a woman who got thrown out a windshield. shot burnt into my brain and desensitized the duck out to 7 years old me. Fast forward 10 years and I watched a classmate of mine get smacked by a pickup truck in front of my house while he was on a bike. Ran to him and he was obviously already dead and his abdomen was basically jello. I stayed with him until the ambulance took him. Somehow out of the whole experience the worst thing about it was me trying to explain to my mom why I had blood up to my elbows. When I was 11 years old my best friend passed out a swim meet. Me and my friends at first thought she was fine, but 2 days later, we were brought to the hospital to visit her. She was in a coma and completely unrecognizable. Her parents told us to try to talk to her because she might be able to hear us, but all we could do was cry. She died later that day. I don't think anyone knew how to properly help a bunch of 11-year-olds grieve. Edit. We later found out she had died due to a heart defect. In 4th grade I had a sleepover with another boy who was more, let's say, developmentally advanced than me. I was a small kid, always the smallest in my class. At night he grabbed me, pinned me down face first, pulled down my pajamas and raped me. I didn't scream. I just froze. It hurt, but to be honest it didn't hurt too bad. I was just learning about sex, and he told me that this is what adults do, and I'm being the woman. I was curious at the time and part of me just wanted to go along. But also I couldn't resist, since he was bigger than me and pinning me down. I've never told anyone. I just told my parents that he played too rough, and I didn't want to play with him anymore, so we never had him over, and I never went back to his house. They believed that, since I was a kind of soft child. Honestly, I've never written this out before. I don't think about it often. Maybe once a year. But when I do, oh man does it hurt. So this is the very first time you have told anyone. Also, those memories hurt differently than other memories. IDK how to describe it, but it just hurts more deeply, and the fear/sadness lingers. My sister tried to commit suicide when I was 7 by cutting her arms, legs and neck with a razor blade. My older cousins found her and hauled her into the driveway. Me and my sister grabbed towels for my parents. We waited 20 minutes for an ambulance. She survived and was sent to a group home. This hurt so much my friend and coworker just committed suicide 2 days ago. Edit. I'm a paramedic. He was talking to me right before it, and I was rushing to get the legal paperwork to force him for a psych eval, but was too late. My last memories of him is us arguing, and then realizing he needed help and failing. Edit. Thank you so much guys for everyone who reached out and personally messaged me. It does make me feel good, even though I don't know you, that people are still out there caring about each other. I'm sure my friend would have been impressed to see all this. Edit. I'm amazed and beside myself how many people this comment had reached and affected, the amount of support you guys have given. It really got me through today, which was pretty rough. Thank you all. My last foster mother gave me a reason to splash in the tub. Guess my 3 or 4 year old self needed taught not to splash water. She held my face underwater for what seemed a lot longer than it probably was. I never understand how these animals pass through the checks to become foster parents in the first place. My mom's friend is a social worker. She says that she regularly has kids in foster families beg her to send them back to the group home because their foster family is worse than their own abusive family they were rescued from in the first place. So much abuse going on, people hating kids and only fostering for the money. My parents were fighting. I was about 5 and my brother 7. Dad threw mum down the stairs and threw her university textbooks at her. Grabbed her face and hit her multiple times. My brother and I were crying, didn't know what to do, so we just watched. Edit. They separated 5 years later, which was a bit late. Divorce was just finalized last month, woohoo. Fun fact about my dad, he forced my mom to marry him 3 days after meeting her in real life. He met her in the States, but lives in Canada. Then when it came time to cross the border, she is an immigrant from Indonesia. He made her marry him. I didn't know this until this year. He's a real scumbag, and I don't plan on ever rebuilding our relationship. Sorry you witnessed that. I posted a similar story elsewhere in the thread. We were just kids, not much more we could have done except watch. When I was younger, like maybe 5 or 6, I was playing around with my brother in my bedroom, who just learned how to walk. So we're just playing in there, and my brother lost his balance and fell on the sharp edge of my bed frame. The edge is so sharp it punctured a hole on my brother's head. He cried while blood was dripping down his head. My parents busted through the door and rushed him to the ER. He has a little scar on his head to this day. Head wounds bleed like crazy and look so scary. My brother cut his head open doing a stupid stunt on his bike without a helmet. He had dark red blood pouring down both sides of his face. Couldn't find the wound through the blood and his hair, so he took a shower. When he came back out, I was able to find the wound, and I thought for a second I could see his brain. My friends and I spent several minutes trying to convince my mother to drive him to the hospital, which she finally did. He got 3 staples in his head, but there was no major damage. It was just the muscle layer I was seeing inside, not his skull or brain. Edit, skill to skull. My mother was abusive emotionally and physically during my younger years. One time, I didn't sing her happy birthday when I was 7, and so she locked me in a room and bent me over to cane me repeatedly. Now obviously to a 7-year-old this was super high-end pain, and I was screaming and crying hysterically, and it became a blur. All I remember was my grandparents banging on the door and threatening to call the police. Edit, lots of people in the comments are wondering if they called the police. The answer is no, they didn't, because this was in Singapore, where corporate punishment was legal, and my mother soon stopped after that. They talked with my dad, who was at work, about the seriousness of the situation, and they hired a helper to keep an eye on my mom and me, and to make sure we are never in the same room. Apparently, dad claimed that mom had a bad day because she lost her job and was diagnosed with a chronic kidney condition, but that didn't really give her an excuse for doing that. She changed slightly when I was in my teen years, but still emotionally blackmails me if something I do doesn't agree with her until I was an adult. Thank God your grandparents seem sane. When I was 9 years old, I was almost kidnapped a block from my house. A van pulled over, and the passenger said "Hey, come here," and then chased my friend and me. My friend was on his bike and got away easily. I ran for the corner and made it around. Luckily a neighbor was in their yard on the other side of a large hedge blocking the view of what was happening. The neighbor was deaf and didn't understand what I was upset about. I waited near the neighbor until the kidnappers got back in the van, and I sprinted home, staying shielded from the street by going through people's yards / jumping fences, etc. Flat out sprint during the last few hundred feet without cover to get to my parents' house. The whole time I was running, I was just waiting to see the van turn the corner and figure out where I live. My deaf neighbor very likely saved my life just by being outside. Losing my mum at 9. She was raising me mostly by herself, and my birth father was not part of my life ever. She was in hospital for something that should have been simple, but she had to stay overnight. The next morning my mum's partner and my uncle, mum's brother, turned up at the partner's parents' place where I was. I was all excited because I only got to see my uncle for birthdays and Christmas. Then they sat me down and told me what happened. First time I know, I just burst into tears. No build up or anything, just heard the words from my uncle and I started crying. Been over 25 years now, and I still get choked up, and I struggle watching any show about foster kids or losing mums to this day. Also, I visit her grave every year on her birthday. That must have been so terrible. I hope you are doing okay these days. Had a babysitter hold my left hand against a lid burner because I was coloring with the wrong hand. Joys of being left-handed. My mom screamed and threw the pencil out of my hand when I wrote. She would hit my hands. I started writing with my right hand at home and left at school. She thought she fixed me and was horrified when she saw me and my daughter both coloring with her left hands years later. She started scolding me for not stopping her. I kicked my mom out before she could traumatize my child. Edit for people asking why. My mom was raised by her grandmother and had me at 40. We had a 100-year generation gap because of the mentality of my great-grandmother who believed that left-handed people are evil and dirty. My mom often had very extreme punishments and views. It was a mental one. I was very young and I woke up to my dad yelling at my mom while she was sobbing for what felt like an eternity over the fact that she bought herself a lighter and didn't buy him one. They both smoke. It was from then on that I noticed my dad was an alcoholic and he hated us. Well shit. I've had another loss 4 months prior, but honestly the worst was dealing with the 13 days of my dad being diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma to his death that quick. We didn't know he had cancer and it spread so rapidly, the whole side of his family had cancer BTW. I was 15, 2 years ago, and it was honestly a horrible and early age to deal with it. I talk about my experience with loss whenever I have the chance to, and sometimes I feel like I'm seeking attention for it. But honestly, it's how I cope. Edit, thank you for all of the support. I don't really have time to reply to all the comments, so I'm just saying thank you for being so nice. Hope you guys see this. A grief support group can be helpful because you can share your experience and know that others understand. It can help you feel less alone, and you are also able to provide empathetic support to others. I'm sorry for the loss you have experienced. Nearly drowning at 5 years old. I don't remember a lot when I was that age, but I remember that pretty vividly. I was walking around a pool, filling a Coke can, and pouring it on the concrete lines. I went to fill it up and slipped in. I remember struggling to get out but just never could. The next thing I remember is being cradled in my mother's arms and thinking what happened. My mom put me in swimming lessons shortly after that. Edit, since this is getting attention I want to point out some important links. Red Cross swimming lessons and water safety. You can use this to find classes near you, if available. Red Cross CPR training. You can find CPR lessons here too. Pool and swimming safety. A few basic tips for behavior around water. Videos of drowning doesn't look like the movies or TV shows. Learn what it looks like by watching videos of real life events and rescues. I was drowning in a family friend's pool. My dad just sat there watching me. My brother saved me and my dad was like, "Are you okay?" Me, coughs up water, "Yeah, I'm good." About 3 weeks before my 7th birthday, my best friend was murdered by her dad. He went nuts one day, killed the dog, cut up all the furniture, stabbed her 47 times, tried to kill her mom when she got home from work. It was completely out of the blue. He was a really great guy, never hit her or anything. He was non-vocal deaf, so no yelling either. But after he was sent to a mental hospital, it came out that he had been hearing voices, which had to be ducking horrible, since he'd been born deaf. That's crazy. I'm sorry that happened. But I didn't even realize deaf people could hear voices. I guess you learn something new every day. Must have been terrifying for him. He might not even have been able to understand what was happening. Doesn't excuse it, obviously, but I can only imagine how terrifying that must have been. It's really terrible you lost your friend at such a young age. Physical, got run over by a car when I was 4. Mental, somewhere around 4. Stepfather was in a drunken rampage and was going to hit me. My dog bit him, so he strangled my dog to death in front of me. Edit, wow. I have gotten so many supporting replies. I'm fine, kind of. I have lived a very sad life, and I won't go into it here, but I'm here. This was one of those things early in life that I didn't even know I remembered until the question brought it up. Kind of sucks that this is my most upvoted comment. You guys are great though. Edit 2. He is not in my life anymore. Has not been for many years. My mom had many bad partners during my life, including my real father. I learned to hate other men through a repeated experience, and I'm still biased against men to this day, even though I'm one. She was willing to put up with just about anything to provide for her kids, but she did not tolerate violence towards her children. Last I'm aware, he was pretty much an empty shell, living alone in a rundown trailer. I don't hate him, because there isn't really anything there to hate anymore. This one hit me in my gut. I can say with almost complete confidence I would be a different person today if something like that had happened to me. I'm really sorry. My mom took my dad and I to the park, where she was planning on telling him that she was leaving him. I was told to wait in the car as I heard them yelling at each other. My mom then opened the car door, told me she loved me, and left me and my dad there. We tried looking for her, but couldn't find her. Watching my mom walk away and out of my life at 7 years old gave me horrible separation anxiety. Edit. Hi, so I posted this last night and woke up to tons of love, and I'm just in shock to how much attention this has gotten, because this was the first time I've posted on Reddit. I've gotten a few questions, so I'm gonna answer them here. After running away, she had a boyfriend pick her up. I found this out years later after the incident. Yes, I did see her again a year later, because she tried getting split custody of me but failed. After that I would only see her very rarely. I wanna say thank you for all the nice comments. I appreciate them so much. Probably coming home from school to find my house empty, then live with my teenage sister in that empty house for a few weeks. Then a parent came and picked me up and brought me to the new house. Found out they got a divorce. I was about 9. WTF, they just both decided to abandon you for several weeks while they did their divorce papers? Yeah, while they moved into new places. It happened a few months after my mom got married to my stepdad when I was 7 or 8. My brother and I growing up were your typical kids. We just played video games, didn't do drugs, steal, etc. We did however do normal kid stuff that would get us into trouble. I remember the first time my stepdad disciplined us by shoving us both into walls and punching us a few times. Long story short, it got worse over time and I just made myself numb to everything. My BO dad wouldn't let me live with him, and my mom contributed to the abuse and gaslit us. Our extended family turned a blind eye, and it didn't help that my mom is a compulsive liar. A dog ripped a part of my cheek off. I looked in the mirror before I went to the and saw my exposed jawbone. Edit. It was a Great Dane mutt, and it was probably my fault for staring it down. I stayed the night in and only needed 16 stitches. I was very lucky that it didn't get infected because the wound was so deep. When I was 10, a Rottweiler bit my nose and its teeth pierced my nose and I passed out, plus pouring blood everywhere. It was my friend's dog and they didn't take me to the hospital because they didn't want their dog taken away, so they just cleaned me up and I went home. No idea why my parents didn't do anything.